Hey everybody, it's Dr. Hyman. How you doing? Oh gosh, I'm back at my house for a little bit. You probably recognize the different scenery, and excited to talk to you today because I'm going to be doing a bunch of series of Instagram lives, and I have a very special guest today to talk about senses, our senses, and particularly things that are highly influencing our ability to interact with our environment, our health, our longevity. And we have a wonderful guest, David Edwards, who's a friend of mine, someone I've met recently, and is doing really great work. He's looking at how do we improve human health through the air we breathe, and looking at what we eat. Obviously, I'm interested in that, and how do we regenerate life on the planet. He's a scientist. He's scientific researcher at Harvard. His invention startups and his creative spaces in France and US have led to the development of Airway hygiene, which is something we don't think about very often, but and also a really amazing new consumer platform called FEND. He's a professor of practice bioengineering at Harvard in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences from 2001 to 2019, and he's now associate and starting this new company called FEND, which we're going to talk about, and which helps support a nonprofit called Next Breath. And he's also got a restaurant, which I've actually eaten at, called Senses, just I think it was before COVID, or maybe when things are just kind of getting bad. And it was really great. It's a regenerative restaurant. Now, there's not too many regenerative food restaurants out there, which I'm a big fan of. So I'm gonna invite David on and see if we can get him going. This is the annoying part. David Edwards. There he is. Okay. So I just invited him, and hopefully he'll come on now and join. But his work's very cool. Particularly in terms of COVID, that we've gotten really aware of the respiratory challenges we're facing and the respiratory diseases we've got, and it's quite a problem. So I don't know if David you're watching, but hopefully you can join. You have to sort of try to invite yourself too. That might help as well. And we'll see if we can get you going. I'll try it again. David Edwards. There we go. Okay. See if we got. Okay, let's see if we can do this. That message was sent, so we should be good. Are you there, David? Come on, we need you. Okay. I need to see your invitation, your request. I know all the rest of you are requesting to come on, but there's people from Brazil, from Ecuador, from San Francisco. Okay. Wave, I think you mean this, but I don't think you mean that actually. No, David, are you having a challenge getting on? You need to accept my request. And Pakistan, wow. Okay. Let's try one more time. David, if you're there, just join us and we can have a chat. I'm excited to talk to you about senses and some of this new technology. I mean, it's really interesting looking at some of the stuff that David's done around COVID and a portable device that helps to reduce your viral load and sort of prevent you from getting sick. It's kind of cool. I've used it, and I think it's more and more science on it all the time. So let's see. Maybe I have to call him and come back on, but I will do my best to get him on. And see him. Oh, there he is. Haha.
Hey.
You made
Mark,
it.
how are you? I'm so sorry. I hope you can see me.
Yes, I can. Your lower face is cut off. You might want to adjust your phone, but it's great. Can you move your camera a little bit so we can see your whole face? There we go. Nice. Okay, right, great. Oh, so David and I met couple years ago in Martha's Vineyard, and he invited me to come speak at his restaurant Senses, where I talked about food fix. We had really interesting gathering of people, and you sort of share with us some of your work that you're doing around FEND and changing the way we think about respiratory diseases. So welcome. And we live in a world where there's a lot of dirty air and bad food, dirty food, and we're fighting to clean up the environment and the food system. But you talk about other ways that we can, the natural ways that we can actually have clean air and actually crave clean food. So what is that about?
Well, thank you, Mark. Yeah, so our bodies have evolved to crave clean air and crave clean food while being prepared for a dirty world. And the way that works is that we have this natural innate immune system and olfactory system which both defend ourselves and guide us to living relatively clean and healthy lives in relatively dirty circumstances. And specifically, I focus on, as you know, this sensory control system between our noses and our mouths and our upper airways, where the air that we breathe is hydrated and cleaned of material. And that's essential for our lower respiratory health and our whole body health. And what's interesting about the material that's pulled out of the air is that it's a combination of particles that we don't want to get deep into our lungs, and they fall out onto a mucus lining our upper airways. And that mucus is then moved towards the mouth, where we swallow the particles soon after inhaling them. And so our upper airways keeps our lungs clean. And and secondly, there are materials that are pulled out that we interpret as scent and flavor, and these send signals to our brains that we process in the vicinity of the hippocampus. And what's important about that, and as you know, Mark, about 80% or more of flavor is actually olfactory.
Yeah.
And so yes, voila. So what's really interesting is that we then associate positive metabolic experiences, calories and nutrition, with flavor memories. And so the way it's supposed to work is that our cravings then guide us to eat things that bring us positive metabolic experiences. So in a perfect world, our upper airways are keeping our lungs clean and keeping our lives healthy through eating the right foods.
Yeah, and so David, what we're seeing is that globally respiratory diseases are lung diseases from smoking and from fires, are terrible. I mean, I actually went to Nepal and studied sort of public health there when I was in medical school. And I saw young women having a condition that I only saw in old smokers who've been smoking for like 50 years, called cor pulmonale, which is right heart failure from the damage to their lungs from emphysema. But it was from cooking inside in these places where their just respiratory tracts were so damaged from that, in chimneys. And of course, we see smoking on the rise all over the world. It's down here, but they've exported it to everywhere else. And so we're seeing the rise of respiratory diseases, and obviously heart disease is a huge killer. Famine and malnutrition are growing, and yet we're hungry and we're obese. So it's like we have 2 billion overweight people and almost a billion hungry people. If our bodies are so smart, why is there a problem here?
Well, as you just pointed out, Mark, we have a twin set of problems. One is a breathing air that's far dirtier than it's ever been. And there are the circumstances that you described. Actually, 9 out of 10 people are breathing dirty air today, and including in this country, obviously. And we're also eating dirty food. And you talk a lot about this, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. So generally, we're hacked sensorially by the environment that we're living in, and it's derouting our immune system and also our flavor interpretation system, so we're eating the wrong things. So just to focus on both of those things, but really quickly, in terms of the air we breathe. So I mentioned the fact that our upper airways are cleaning the air we breathe. And what's critical for that is that they hydrate the air. And in hydrating the air, water is evaporated out of our upper airways, the lining fluid. And when that happens, Mark, salt concentration increases in the airway lining fluid, and that pulls water out of cells, and that keeps the airways hydrated. And so that's the way it's supposed to work. What we found here during the pandemic is that when you breathe really dirty, really dry air, which we're increasingly doing, that thins out the mucus, and it causes very high concentrations of salt. It causes stress and cilia to slow down, and it actually causes the mucus surface to begin to break up a lot more easily. And so you create a lot of the little respiratory droplets that we've been hearing about in COVID-19. Well, it turns out that breathing of really dirty air does the same thing. And also various things that hurt your immune system, including eating poorly or just generally stressful aging, stressful circumstances, can all lead to your mucus barrier function breaking down. And as you know, we knew that about the gut mucus, but we're learning that about the airway lining mucus too. So we're generally living in immune circumstances and environmental circumstances that are making our upper airways clean our lungs a lot less well, and that's leading to this rise in respiratory disease and absolutely contributing to the current pandemic. I just want to mention that the flavor hacking that has happened in the food system is actually very related to the same problem, because we're all talking about the olfactory, this sort of air we breathe. And one thing that I'm not sure if you're aware of this experiment, just to give your listeners an understanding of how flavor hacking works in processed food. If I place a swab of fructose at the back of my mouth, as you know, fructose is not a natural sugar, and I should not want to crave it.
Well, but it's fruit, right? It's natural food, but you're saying the high fructose corn syrup, you mean?
Right, exactly. And
right.
So when I put it at the back of my mouth, it leads to 30 minutes later a spike in my glucose levels in my blood. And so there's a sugar high that comes from a completely olfactory experience. And so it's possible to create metabolic experiences that lead us to crave things that we otherwise would not.
Amazing. And so what can we do about all these challenges with our respiratory tract and airway hygiene and all that? How do we address those?
Well, there's a couple things we can do. One, which those of us who have access to clean air and who have access to the eating of clean food can eat better and breathe better. And so I'm opening this new restaurant, Senses, in Cambridge, precisely to give people access to organic regenerative food. And some of us have those kinds of access. Most people and most of us today do not. And so what do we do? So fortunately, science has made tremendous progress in understanding how the upper airway immune system works and the olfactory system works. And as a consequence, we've discovered a way of writing the sensory signals, particularly when it comes to the immune system, through the delivery of a combination of water and salt to the upper airways. And this is leading to something that we believe will be the next major human hygiene here on the planet, what we call airway hygiene.
And how does that? I mean, you've developed a product called FenRight FBND, which is commercially available now. Is it?
Exactly. So,
how does it work, and how does it address this issue? And what are the differences people will notice by using it?
Yeah, so FEND is the first example of airway hygiene, and I'll demonstrate it for you, but just so people understand what it is, it's salt and water. It's salts that are in the ocean. The salinity of the solution is approximately the salinity of the ocean. It has a particularly high concentration of calcium or magnesium salt, and it looks like this, and when one tips it over, it creates a cloud of salt droplets that have just the right size so that when you breathe them through your nose, they deposit right here in your trachea and main bronchi where respiratory droplets are created. And as a consequence, you clean away these respiratory droplets for about 6 hours. So it's something that you should do 3 times a day. It takes about 10 seconds, and it costs about 10 cents per application. You say, well, what do I feel? Well, one thing that we're finding, and we have a couple papers that are in review right now, one from a clinical trial in Bangalore where the product is being used in the front lines to treat COVID-19 patients at Bangalore Baptist Hospital, is it increases your oxygen saturation level.
Wow.
Which is something that's really fundamental, as you know, to your health and obviously the COVID-19 symptoms. It also, one of the consequences of airway hygiene is that it is, for those of us who have allergies, it's really effective at reducing our need of allergy meds. And so we have a lot of people, there's about 10,000 people who are using FEN today in the United States. It came out in the middle of the pandemic. And we have a lot of consumers who are coming back to us saying that they're, they've reduced significantly the number of
Amazing.
allergy meds that they've needed to take. And
What's
generally,
the scientific explanation for that?
Well, there are two basic mechanisms. One is the cleaning away of respiratory droplets. So as you inhale, Mark, between 100 million and 10 billion particles a day. And those include allergens, carcinogens, pathogens, and you want those to be cleared. If you have respiratory droplets forming, they can get back in the air and get deep in the lungs and cause problems that relate to lower respiratory tract diseases like asthma or COPD or obviously COVID-19. It's a clearance issue. It's a matter of clearing particles better.
It clears it out so you don't get the infection.
It helps mucus function work in the particles to get to your mouth where you swallow them. And the other thing to bear in mind is that this is a hypertonic saline, lead to hastening of cilia beat, and that also is effective. And so one thing that people notice in using the product is that it relieves decongestion. And so it's a good thing to take at night, by the way.
So if you're congested, it helps clear it.
It does.
Amazing. And how does this compare to like other techniques for getting salt water up your nose, like the neti pot, or often I'll recommend sinus irrigation for patients with sinus issues and allergies?
Yeah, so as you know, nasal salts have been delivered for thousands and thousands of years, and generally are effective at cleaning the mucus. What's unique here is that the salts are being delivered to your trachea and main bronchium. So existing nasal salts or neti pots or nasal gavages have no effect on airway hygiene. They don't clean respiratory droplets from your upper airways. On the other hand, Mark, what is effective, and we have another paper coming out that shows the benefits of being near the sea, particularly where you have winds blowing off the sea. There are high salt concentrations because of sea spray. So generally exposure to high concentrations of salt, as has, by the way, been observed since the 19th century, as you may know, are beneficial. So the airway hygiene happens just to be a really simple way to place the hygiene in people's pockets.
Wow, that's sort of why I like living on the beach, I guess, because you get the saltwater.
Probably.
Yeah, it's amazing, and people can go to hellofen.com, right? Hellofen.com.
They can. That's exactly right.
HelloFend.com to learn more about it. It was named as Time Magazine's Best Invention of 2020, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And essentially, we have such polluted air. Indoor air pollution is terrible for many people. There's often lots of outdoor pollution in urban areas. There's lots of struggle that people have with respiratory issues and allergies and congestion and sinus issues, and of course COVID. And you know, I know you probably can't make any claims, but it seems that from the work you've done, that you've been observing that it helps of our respiratory tract from COVID. Can you talk about the work you've done around this and how it works?
Yeah.
And by the way, somebody asked
so
me, high blood pressure. Yeah, you can have salt. As long as you don't eat it, you're fine with it.
Yeah. No, this is a really minor amount of salt. We're talking about putting in, less than 1 milligram of salt in your airways. So it's a very, very small amount of salt relative to your body. But just to be clear, so the because of the pandemic severity in India, the product was brought in testing. The woman who leads healthcare for 1 million people in the slums of Bangalore has been using it, and particularly as the pandemic became bad here in the winter, she began a trial in mildly symptomatic patients who were infected by the Delta variant. And so we have a paper that is in the final stages of review right now, Mark, where we find that 3 times a day administration of fen relative to a nasal saline control has a both pretty dramatically reduces symptoms, increases oxygen saturation levels, and also has a pretty dramatic impact on the need for IV antibiotic or steroid intervention.
Yeah, well, I'm going to repost this. People are asking about it, and the website people are asking is HelloFend, FEND.com. Then people want to know if we can get it in Australia. I don't know. Is it possible?
Yeah. Well, we'll figure it out. Right now, we're selling it, frankly, in the United States, and it will be coming out in a mass market form here this fall. And I would also just like to point out, Mark, that one of the challenges here today, given the dirty air we breathe and the dirty food we eat, frankly, is to move from a cognitive realization of the problem we have to a sensorial engagement that 7.5 billion people can participate in. And so we're creating a free online e-community and resource to help people learn about what's being discovered at Frontiers of Science, where the air we breathe and the food we eat is concerned. And if anybody's interested in joining that, we would welcome them to join. It's called Making Sense of Senses.
All right. Well, I love your work, David, and I can't wait to go back to Senses when I go back to Boston. The food was so good. And, aside from trying to help people with their respiratory issues and address the pandemic of COVID by keeping our airways clean, I mean, honestly, I got to get one of those. How do I get one by Thursday? Because I'm going on a plane trip. I gotta get one.
We'll deliver you. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Okay. Because I want to get one because I'm going. It just occurred to me, like, if you're traveling, if you're out with people, if you're in a crowd, if you're in a restaurant, why not just do it as a prophylactic measure and reduce your risk of getting sick, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. And so, in fact, by the way, one of the things that we've found with a collaboration at NIH is that wearing a mask is actually having the same effect as what FEND is doing. In other words, it's moisturizing your upper airways. So FEND, in a way, is giving you, and particularly in circumstances where you can't wear a mask, it gives you a mask-like protection of your own lungs and of those around you. And then if it complements a mask, it has a double protective benefit for sure.
That's great. And so it just decreases the viral load as you do it. It doesn't kill the virus, right?
What it's doing, to be super clear, is it's helping the virus be cleared from your upper airways. And as probably everyone knows who's listening, so long as the viral infection, and this is true for many respiratory infections, stays in the upper airways, it gets clean to the mouth, symptoms, you never really experience symptoms. So that what the airway hygiene is doing is it's helping your body clean itself of infection.
That's incredible. And the uptake on this has been pretty good. Have you got any clinical trials or data from patients?
Yeah, we've actually published 6. We've done 6 human trials, and we're publishing 2 more right now. And we've done studies in India and in the United States, both coasts and the Midwest, little kids to elderly, and both in COVID-19 infected and normals. And it's I think everybody understands that salt and water are eminently safe, but it's extremely effective in a kind of a soap-like way.
That's incredible. And you also talk about how clean air and clean food are related. How are they connected?
Well, we've been talking about the fact that our perception and our memory of food is air-based, right?
Oh, because you smell the food, and that's how we
yeah, and so it's carried through the air. And so as science has learned more about how olfactory signals guide our cravings, and just to give you a few examples, you may know some of this, but if you smell chocolate before you eat chocolate, you'll eat more calories of chocolate. If you smell steak before you eat steak, you eat more calories of steak. Those trials have been done. If you smell chocolate before you eat steak, you'll eat less steak. And so you can hack the olfactory bulb, but you can also, there's a dose response. So if I smell a little chocolate, my ghrelin levels go up, my hunger protein, and I am hungry for chocolate. If I breathe a lot of chocolate, smell a lot of chocolate, my ghrelin levels fall, and I become satiated. So there's a dose response to, so it's possible to deliver scent signals through the air and to curb appetite without any ingested material. So the ability to help people shape their appetite or develop flavors or cravings for foods that are actually good for them is now within reach. So I think that this airway hygiene is a kind of vector that will be really helpful and complementary to eating the right food.
That's great. So are you seeing market for this with allergists and with respiratory physicians? Have you brought it into their attention? And what do they say? Because it must be an interesting thing. I mean, think about the amount of people struggling with allergies and respiratory issues in this country, the asthma It seems like a really amazing
Yes,
tool.
yes. And so the answer is yes. And so just to point out that science moves methodically and fortunately, right? And so the one of the consequences of the pandemic here is that science is happening very fast and it's happening in the public domain. And so we're at a point right now where scientists are publishing papers in preprint mode prior to peer review just to get the data out. And so it's a challenge both for the science community to catch up and for the public to understand what's going on. But the long answer to say that yes, we in all of our papers we're collaborating with clinicians but really, frankly, mostly we've been trying to get the peer-reviewed research out. And we are holding a major conference in Lausanne called Next Breath, which is a new nonprofit that's been created with both members of the Nobel Prize Committee and many leading respiratory clinicians from around the world, focused on this very issue of how do we leverage what's been discovered here in the pandemic to help those who need clean air today find clean air wherever they are.
So important, because I think we talk about food, but we don't talk about air, and we know that the amount of air pollution that we're exposed to is huge, and that the quality of the air we breathe is so bad, and then it connects to everything from heart disease to cancer to obviously respiratory diseases. But it's sort of shocking to me as a doctor to read the data around the harm of poor air quality. In terms of real disease like heart attacks, cancer, I mean, the data is really there, and it's not something we really talk about in medicine. It's like, I guess we can't do anything about it. I tell people to get an air filter, or what are you going to do? But now you actually have something to do about it, which is
well, that's interesting. I mean, one of the realities is that when we think about air pollution, we think about the cloudy skies, whereas the pollution that's particularly harming us is pollution we can't see, and so these very, very, very small particles. And so really, it's only been in the last 20 years or so that science has been focused on how do you clean the airways of these particles. And so yes, I think that airway hygiene is a really straightforward and a way to address that. One of my colleagues, you may know, Francesca Dominici at the Harvard School of Public Health, whose paper came out in Science in November, related to pollution exposure and COVID-19 death and incidents. And so she's been a collaborator of ours, showing how it's possible to reverse some of the effects of polluted air by exposure to high levels of airborne salt and water.
That's incredible. Well, your work is fantastic, David. I encourage everybody to check out HelloFend, FEND, hellofend.com, and I'm going to get one. In fact, you're going to send me one, right? Because I need it by tomorrow.
I am. Yeah, absolutely. You got it.
I'm leaving Thursday. What am I going to do? I'll call you after. We'll figure it out. Yeah. But I realized I should, because I'm worried about the Delta variant and traveling, and it's concerning.
I wouldn't leave home without it for sure. And I frankly, I would actually, my recommendation, it's really like brushing your teeth or washing your hands. This is something that you should be doing a few times a day, just for general respiratory health. And it's not just the COVID-19, honestly, it's just all the stuff that we're being exposed to here in Boston. We've had a big dose of dust from the wildfires in California. So it's a generally good hygiene to make a habit of.
Yeah, and I'm going to where there's wildfires now, like in Sardinia and Turkey, which is a little scary.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a long-term goal here to clean the air and to clean the food that we eat. And in the meanwhile, we've got the world we've got, and we need to be smart about it. And I think airway hygiene is a simple, natural. There's kind of nothing more basic than water and salt means to do something about it.
There you go. The magic of water and salt. I drink electrolytes now. I can put them in my nose. It's all good. Well, David, thank you for your work. Anybody listening should go to Cambridge and go to Senses. It's an amazing regenerative organic restaurant, and there's only I don't even know if there's more than one. You might be the only one. There used to be one in San Francisco. Maybe there's other ones, but there's not that many. Go to hellofend.com and check out the science behind it, learn about it, and why not get one? I mean, it's inexpensive and it really can help protect you around a myriad of things, particularly during COVID. I think we really are at an interesting moment in science where we're learning how to actually help the body do what it's supposed to do. I see this as another tool in the toolkit of functional medicine. So thank you for your work. Thank you for doing the hard science behind it. And really appreciate you, David.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. All right. Take care, buddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.